Welcome to the Ontario Caregiver Organization's webinar series. These webinars bring together caregivers and subject matter experts to explore topics of interest to caregivers. We do this to support and engage chosen family, friends, and neighbors, really anyone caring for someone else. My name is Katie Muirhead, she, her pronouns, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. We begin this gathering by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands which we're on today. While we meet in a virtual platform with people joining us from across the province, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land which we each call home. The land I'm standing on today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendships of Indigenous people. As team members at the Ontario Caregiver Organization, we're learning about the lands from which we work, exploring how we can be meaningful allies and how we can support the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. We invite you to take a moment to reflect on the land where you are. And if you're not familiar with that, we will be sharing an interactive map that tells you which traditional territory your city or town sits on at native-land.ca. Our webinar today is called Supporting Kin, Adoptive Parents, and Caregivers. In today's webinar, we will learn about the issues that adoptive and kinship parents may face and how to get support they need along their caregiving journey. Our speakers will help you understand the common challenges with this unique population and offer information about the supports that are available and how to access them. I'd like to introduce you all to our speakers today and invite them to turn on their cameras at this time. Helen Dawkes-Brown is a private adoption social worker. She has worked in the field of adoption for almost 30 years with the Children's Aid Society, private sector, as well as international adoptions. She's been a presenter on various adoption topics, an expert witness in court on matters of adoption, and has facilitated adoption support groups. Helen is also the chairperson for the Private Adoption Practitioners of Eastern Ontario and has served on several provincial government committees regarding adoption issues. We also have Nicole Renaud joining us, and Nicole is a regional parent liaison with Adopt for Life. She is a mother to 5 amazing children through birth and adoption. She has experience in areas that include public adoption, sibling group adoption, foster to adopt, and openness. Her family enjoys and values openness with her children's siblings and their extended family. She has parenting experience with mental health challenges, developmental delays, and complex trauma. Nicole also has a degree in psychology and family and social relations and has advocated for her children within the school system and the healthcare professionals across Canada for services, diagnoses, and supports. Nicole is dedicated to supporting the needs of children and families. So welcome, Helen and Nicole.
So thank you. November is actually Adoption Month, so I wanted to thank the OCO for hosting this event as it aligns nicely with what is happening this month throughout the province. I think when we talk about caregivers to children that come to your home through kin or adoption or customary care, we have found that there is an increased need for mental health support. And so to start, I think I just wanted to explain a little bit about mental health, mental well-being. So really that incorporates our emotions, our thoughts and feelings, our ability to solve problems, and to overcome difficulties, whether it's social connections or our understanding of the world around us. And mental illness itself would be the diagnosis or conditions that affect our mood, our thinking, our behavior. So children who join families through adoption, kin, customary care may be at a higher risk for emotional and behavioral challenges than other children, And as caregivers, you may need extra support. I think it sums it up well when it says you can have good mental health with a mental illness and vice versa. So that's something I think we need to remember. Looking at mental health in general, 1 in 5 people in Canada will experience a mental health problem or an illness. And most living with mental illness see their symptoms begin before the age of 18. And so if you are caring for a young person and you're seeing perhaps some red flags, then that does make sense. And adoptees also can have a higher need for support with mental health issues. So, what are maybe some of the causes for increased mental health support? Of course, there are inherited traits within families, and as well, a child or a youth may have been exposed environmentally before birth, drugs or alcohol. And of course, our brain chemistry itself affects how we think and how we see the world. I think too, when we look at what increases the risks of developing mental illness, some families have a history of struggling with mental health. There are also stressful family situations, perhaps ongoing or chronic medical conditions, brain damage from injury, traumatic experiences. The use of alcohol and drugs, of course, impacts our mental health. And for those who have suffered from childhood abuse or neglect, that also impacts someone's mental health. I think also we need to consider that for some families, there is intergenerational trauma, and this, of course, has a large effect on someone's mental health. Sometimes it's very hard to ask for help and not sure when, how, who to ask help from, especially when you've spent perhaps months meeting with a social worker and trying to prove or to say, yes, I'm going to be a good parent and I have the skills and I'm committed. So, when you've gotten to that point, where do you go for help? So there are quite a few areas that you can access. Of course, your family doctor, walk-in clinic perhaps could be a good start for referrals. Your school has a lot of resources built in, community groups, hospitals for those families maybe in Eastern Ontario. If you've adopted internationally, at the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, there is an international adoption clinic. And so that's an excellent resource. But I think when you're looking for help, it's really imperative to find adoption competent and trauma informed help. Because I truly believe that those professionals and peers will be able to support you best in your caregiving role. So parenting, is it really the same for everyone? I think that all parenting shares some similar responsibilities, but parenting through kin, adoption, customary care is very different. Yes, we all have meals to do, we all have laundry, we all have homework, but some responsibilities are quite unique to adoptive kin and customary families. So perhaps you're a family that is supporting openness, whether it's through an agreement or an order. Maybe you have an ongoing relationship with your child or youth's first family or birth family, or even again, you may be maintaining connections to that child's culture that's different from your own. I know that Katie, our next presenter, I think summarized it best when when she had said, parenting is hard work, but parenting children who join families through adoption, kinship, customary care, it's more difficult, and it's more complex for caregivers. I think you really can find most of what you need through some of these groups. The Adoption Council of Ontario, Canadian Mental Health, and Adopt for Life, which is an agency that Nicole belongs to. So what I wanted to point out with the Adoption Council of Ontario is they provide some excellent training and webinars. And one of the best that I have seen is that which is called Pathways to Permanence. And it's free. It's for anyone parenting children who have experienced trauma and loss. So in all, it's 24 hours, so 8 classes for that. If that seems a bit long or you can't commit to that at this point, there are some shorter webinars, trainings. They do have a list of adoptive, competent, trauma-informed professionals, information, library, as well as post-adoption resource map for Ontario. So that's certainly one of the areas that you could start. Of course, there is the Canadian Mental Health Association, and they will offer some support and counseling for children and youth who are experiencing mental health challenges. And you can find someone local within your area, depending where you are in Ontario. I think what I've learned certainly through my own parenting, as well as being involved with the hundreds of families that I've worked with over the years, is that it really does take a village to raise a family. Not only do we need professionals, but we also need peer support and groups, which leads me to the second part of our presentation with Nicole Renaud, who will be talking about Adopt for Life.
Great. Thank you so much, Helen. I'm so happy to be here today representing Adopt for Life. I am a parent, and I have the lived peer experience, and the unique thing about the services that Adopt for Life is able to provide to families is that we are a peer support group. We have that lived experience, and everyone within our organization is touched by kinship, customary care, or adoption. So we bring that unique component that sometimes families are looking for in their connection with professionals, but they aren't able to get. When I say we get it because we are in the trenches doing the hard work every day with you. So we definitely bring a unique perspective to the table, and something that is, I think, a very important support for families to be able to access. I think about my own journey with adoption, and we're almost a decade in to our journey with our boys, and some of the things that I felt, the isolation, the feelings of aloneness, the worry, the stress. It's important that we talk about those things as caregivers, and we can start those discussions with families so that families don't feel alone. And while we can't change the circumstances or, the journey that families are on, our goal is to always sit with families, to advocate with families, to empower families to advocate for themselves, and make sure that they feel unique and supported and represented in their needs and their desires for their own families. So just a little bit briefly about Adopt for Life and our mission and our values. So we are funded by the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services here in Ontario. So there is never any cost for anyone to join Adopt for Life to receive services or supports. And one of the really unique things about Adopt for Life is that we want to sit with families and be on the journey with them from the time that they're considering adoption to the time that they're placed with the child, to the time that they're parenting their child, and even on into independence. So we welcome families at any point in their journey to join us if they're considering adoption. We have families that join us when their children are grown, and I think that gives a unique perspective to our community as far as what that journey looks like and how to help support our children on into independence sometimes and on into adulthood. So there's no age limit, which is unique because a lot of services stop for families and children at 18 or 21, and that's not the case with Adopt for Life. We are here with you to be with you on this lifelong journey, and our goal is to help families and professionals and the greater community see and understand that this really truly is a lifelong journey. This isn't an event. This is something that we need to have ongoing services and supports for. So our goal is to be a community of people with lived peer experience that can strengthen and empower caregivers. We want to make sure that families feel supported, families feel strong. Our goal is always to connect with families prior to a crisis or trauma happening. We welcome families to join us at any point in their journey, but with the goal that we can help, hopefully, connect families to resources and supports, whether it be professional resources within the community or even the lived peer experience with the community that we have with our caregivers, so that families feel supported and that they're able to access the resources that they need to be strong. And I think back on my own journey with adoption, and I remember thinking there's all these services and supports for my children, and rightfully so. They need a lot of support and services, but who can help me? Who can I turn to and who can I reach out to? And I kind of liken it to, I'm a parent by both birth and adoption. And I like to say, when I gave birth to my daughters, I could call my mom or my grandma or my aunt or my sister because they've all been there and they know, what to do. So for me, it's being able to share that same, support for the community and to reach out and say, I get it, I've been there. So, when you're welcoming a child to your family by adoption, or permanency through customary care or even through kinship, we are really the people that you can reach out to. We are trauma informed and adoption competent, and we have the lived experience. And it's just about the recognition that this is hard work. And I feel like for me, no one ever sat me down and held my hand and said, this is going to be hard. We're here for you. And that's really who Adopt for Life is going to be. So our goal is to, empower families to advocate for themselves. We certainly support and advocate for families. We can attend IEP meetings, IPRC meetings within the school, medical appointments for families, community events, looking for inclusion for our families. And I think sometimes when you have someone with you that's kind of been down that road, understands the questions to ask, and knows what services and supports are available, it really does empower families to get the best possible outcomes for their family. So a little bit about some of the success that Adopt for Life has experienced since we received funding in 2016. We have a very, very active peer support group through, in non-COVID times, in-person support. Right now, all our support groups are running virtually, but we have community events, live peer supports. We also offer webinars and information opportunities for the community to come together. We're supporting thousands of families with peer support and system navigation. We can offer families intensive advocacy support in a one-to-one capacity. We have a very, very thriving and highly engaged community online through our Facebook community, where we offer private Facebook groups for families to come and connect. We have public social media communities where we have, I think now we're up to over 8,000 followers. So I guess the point of this is to say that we are this community of thousands of families. So if you're looking for support, and I can't offer it to you as a RPL, and I don't pretend to be, the expert in everything by any means, but I can connect you with someone who's on that same journey. And the goal is always to recognize that while we all fall under this big umbrella of adoption, everyone's journey looks different. If you've adopted publicly, that's different than if you've adopted privately, different if you've welcomed a family to your child through kinship. And even if we've come to the table on the same, our starting points are the same, and you've adopted publicly and I've adopted publicly, those journeys often look different. So it's the recognition that here you can be connected with someone who's on a similar path and journey as yourself. So a little bit about the roadmap here that we offer to families and how we can support families. We always do an intake process. And the intake really gives us a chance to get to know you, get to know your family, get to know what services and supports you're looking for. And We recognize that every family is different, and some families are looking for intensive supports and services, while other families are simply looking for a community, a place to belong. Perhaps they're just interested in social media, connecting with the community that way, or you're only interested in support groups, or you're looking for advocacy within the community. We really want to get to know you, how we can help you, and what resources we think would be beneficial for you and your family. So at the intake process, we ask some demographic questions, and we get to know the family, see what supports you would like. And then from there, we're able to offer you, welcome you to our community. And once someone's welcomed into our community, they have access to the range of services and supports that Adopt for Life is able to offer in the peer-to-peer model. We have buddy and mentor program. It's a very active and engaging program. So like I said, well, the recognition is that, I've never welcomed a child home through international adoption. I can connect you to a person that has, or I don't have the lived peer experience of welcoming a teenager into my home. I can connect you with a family that has. And if you're looking for if you're parenting a child that has a specific need or a specific diagnosis, we are a community of people that can connect you with other families, on a similar path as yourself. And some families come to us and they say, I'm really looking for a connection with a local community member. I want this relationship for myself, but also for my children. And then we can help facilitate that too, to make sure that geographically we're connecting you with someone who's close by. But some families are looking for anonymity, and they're looking for support from, someone outside of their community. And we can also match families with other families. I'm in Southwestern Ontario. I can connect families to a family in Toronto or, Ottawa. So it's really getting to know the family, their level of comfort, and what it is that they're looking for. The goal ultimately for us is always to reduce the risk of placement disruption. We're able to provide some parent support groups for families. Right now, all of our groups are all virtual. We have regional support groups, which is a great opportunity for families to connect with others who are in their geographic area. But then we also recognize the need to offer supports to families who have unique journeys. So we offer a single parent group, interracial group, families that are parenting Indigenous children. And we're really trying to be in touch with the community to see, what is the need and how can we help support the community best. We offer weekly snack and chats, which offer opportunities for our community to tune in and talk about pertinent topics that are, top of mind, whether that's openness or trauma, or if there's a new resource that we found that we think the community would like. We offer parent and caregiver webinars. Sometimes we talk about what it looks like to welcome an older child to your home, developmental trauma, openness, identity, child to parent violence and aggression. We're really trying to be in touch with what it is the community wants and be receptive in hearing those needs and being able to provide the services that our families are telling us that they're looking for. So again, we are able to connect. If there's anything anyone takes away, is that, Adopt for Life is a sense of community and a sense of family and really a sense of belonging. And my goal as a regional parent liaison is to encourage that relationship. And it's really amazing to see the connections that our community members have made with one another through the services that we're providing. And those indirect connections that, we have someone come to a support group and they're hearing other people's story, and then they're able to reach out and say, hey, our journeys look the same. I'd really love to connect with you. So it's really about building that network of people around us. And like Helen said, it really does truly take a village, and the recognition that this is really, really hard work. And it's okay to say that. And I remember, kind of running around making sure that the house was absolutely spotless and cleaning my cupboards and my oven. And my husband would say, if they're not going to look in your cupboards, right? But it's just, we almost feel this need to be the perfect parent as adoptive parents. And there really is not. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. But there is that expectation sometimes, whether real or perceived, that we put on ourselves, and also that the community makes us feel sometimes. So it's the ability to sit and be with people amongst kind of your people and the people that really understand. We provide advocacy in schools, within community organizations, at doctors. And I know myself, I always like to talk about my own experience, and these meetings can be very intimidating. Often I feel we have people talking at us, I didn't know what questions to ask my first go round with my own children. So it's wonderful to have someone there that can kind of help guide you through that process and walk you through the process and knows, what questions to ask, how to access these services, and has connections with the greater community already existing, so that if there is a need, we can reach out to the person who can help facilitate, whatever service that needs. So yeah, we can help with different funding supports. And I think I saw a question about funding just pop up. So just really briefly, if a family is looking to connect, they're looking for support with filling out perhaps a disability tax credit or special services at home. Those are some of the funding applications that we recognize for families are so essential. And we have a team here that can help families work through that, again, with the knowledge that, it can be, I've navigated those myself, and it's very intimidating, and it's definitely a frustrating, nail-biting process sometimes. So again, having that community of people that we've been there, we understand, we can help guide you through that process. Do you want to go ahead, Helen? So a little bit about myself and my coworkers and my colleagues as regional parent liaisons and what we can offer to families. So many of us have training and professional backgrounds in social work, counseling, special needs, mental health, but we're not working as professionals, we're working as peers. And what brings us to the table is that we have that lived experience in adoption, kinship, customary care. Many of us have been foster parents. We have taken so much training as far as being trauma informed and adoption competent. So we really bring to the table our lived experience, and that's what we're working with here. Isn't in a professional capacity. It's to be here as a peer, to support you as a peer, and be there for you, because there's lots of services that are able to offer that professional component. But for me, it's, and within my own family, I have a family member who also is an adoptive parent. And for me on my journey, being able to reach out to them to say, what was it like for you? And how did you do this? And how did you feel? That connection and that relationship is really priceless. And for me, it really removed a lot of the sadness and some of the grief that I felt on my journey, and some of the isolation and some of these really big emotions that someone was able to kind of sit with me and say, yeah, I felt that too, or I really understand where you're coming from, and this is what it looked like for us. So that's basically, as an RPL, we're using our lived experience, and we are all touched by adoption, kinship, or customary care. We complete the intakes, like I mentioned earlier, to welcome new community parents and caregivers to understand a family's needs. We're able to lead in-person and virtual parent support groups. Our goal is always to be connecting with the local community to identify respite services, medical resources, different therapies, different professionals that we feel our community can benefit from connecting with. We're able to match families for ongoing peer support with a buddy or a mentor. I talked a little bit about our buddy program, but our mentor program would be if we have a new family that's welcoming a child home, we're able to connect them with a family who has been on a similar journey and connect them in a mentor and a mentee type of relationship. We advocate for and with parents and families, and our goal is always to advocate with families, not for them, and to really ultimately empower families to advocate for themselves. A little bit about Adopt for Life and some of our Facebook groups. Like I mentioned, we want to be with families throughout the entire journey. So we have the Beginning the Journey Facebook group, we have the Waiting for Our Children, and then we have the Raising Our Children, where all of our adoptive families would be. This is our provincial group and by far our most active and engaged community. And it's a great place for families to come and share their experiences and say, this happened in school today, like, has anyone experienced this? Or, my child's experiencing a regression and this is what's happening. Like, has anyone connected with a trauma-informed therapist in the Toronto area? So there's a really great sense of community here. And for us, in many ways, COVID has removed a lot of the geographical barriers to services and supports for some of our families. So the provincial group serves as a great place for families to come and say, I live in Barrie, but I know of this great therapist in London that provides, virtual supports for families. So it's a really great place, a place to share resources, experiences, feelings, emotions. It can be difficult sometimes. We have families that are sharing their highs and also, some really difficult and complex things. But Adopt for Life never shies away from talking about or supporting families during really difficult periods. And we recognize that if we can be empowering families to share, we're starting that discussion and removing the stigma, which is so essential to families staying strong. And then from there, on our next slide, we have a few examples of our more specialized Facebook groups. And we are starting some really exciting things coming up at the end of this year and into the new year as well. So we have our kinship caregivers group with the recognition that caring for a child in a kinship situation is different than welcoming a child to your family through adoption. What does that look like, and how can we be supporting our caregivers who are in a kinship caregiving situation, or single parents? And sometimes our single parents have come to us, they adopted as a single parent, and then sometimes single parents have come to us through loss of a spouse or divorce. And what does that look like, and how can we help these families and these parents and caregivers? How can we help them help their children through, sometimes some really difficult experiences and journeys? So that lived experience that I don't have supporting a family, my families and all families that are registered with Adopt for Life, they're able to get through that single parent support group. We have our Strengthening Open Adoptions with the recognition that there's, openness is wonderful and amazing, but for some families it can be complex. And what does that journey look like, and how can we support families? We are starting a post-adoption depression support group. That's going to be starting at the end of the month, again, with the recognition that we need to be talking about some of these difficult journeys that families are on in order to properly get them access to supports and to start the discussion and remove that stigma of there's nowhere for me to go. Who do I talk to? Who do I reach out to? When families feel safe and secure, and many families feel that in our community, we can empower them to start sharing their journeys and to help get them on the road to, the professional supports that they need and the resources, the connectivity that we're able to provide. And sometimes for families that come to us, they're in a sense of, they're very overwhelmed, they're experiencing a trauma or crisis. Sometimes us, just saying, these are the resources that I know of within the community, that can be very, very helpful for families as well. So the link to join our Adopt for Life community is here, and I believe I saw it posted in the chat. So we welcome anyone who's touched by adoption, kinship, or customary care to join our community. We also have a professionals portal for professionals that are looking for what we're up to here at Adopt for Life. They would have access to our monthly newsletter. If we have webinars that we're targeting towards professionals, if we're running a campaign about some information and we're looking to share that with the professionals within the community. Basically, joining our community is that we want to work together as a team, and we recognize that everyone has a different job, but ultimately our goals are all the same in making sure that families feel strong, represented, supported, and empowered. And I think for me, that's the biggest thing. Is it's so wonderful to help families and give them the tools they need, and then watch them go into the community and advocate for themselves. And that's our goal, right? Is to make sure that families feel that, and the recognition that if you don't feel like you're at that point, we'll be there to help you, and we can sit at the table and have those discussions with you. But it is very rewarding to see our community being empowered by the services and supports that Adopt for Life is able to offer. Just the recognition that families don't have to be alone in their journey at all. We are here for you. And sometimes families need intensive supports, and then sometimes families are just looking to connect, to say, like I had a tough day today, or this happened at school, and what would you recommend? So whatever the need is of the community, Adopt for Life can be there to meet that for them. And like I mentioned before, Adopt for Life does not shy away from talking about or really tackling head on some of the really difficult things that our families face. So it's really important that we talk about things like post-adoption depression syndrome, and what does child-to-parent violence and aggression look like? And there's the recognition that child-to-parent violence and aggression, or CPVA as we call it here, is that's prevalent within the community as a whole. It's not something that's unique to adoptive families or families on a permanency journey or kinship families, but because of the needs of our children, there is a higher incidence and a higher prevalence of child-to-parent violence and aggression. And How can we get families the support that they need? How can we connect them with professionals? Sometimes it's, suggesting like, what is it that you need? How can we help you? What does a safety plan look like? How do you have a safety plan? Can you develop that with the professionals that you're connected with? And making sure that families have the resources that they need and the acknowledgement. And I think for families that I support, the biggest thing that I've seen is that you are not alone. You are not alone in what is happening within your family. How can we get you the help and support? Because talking about it is the first step to making sure that families get that support that they need. So we're very, very passionate about sitting with families at all points in their journey. Obviously, we love when families are strong and stable and healthy and doing well, but there's the recognition that it's just as important for us to be with families during really difficult times, whether it be, a marital breakdown, a loss of a spouse, an adoption disruption, child to parent violence and aggression, post-adoption depression syndrome. So whatever it is, we will be there for you. The expectation is often, from the greater community that adoption is sunshine and rainbows, and we need to change that view, that worldview, that this is really, really hard. And we talk about expectations for our kids. Sometimes I have to have my own expectations of me as a parent, and that this is a really hard job, and it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to have a difficult day. It's okay to have a difficult week. We can be there to help support you throughout the entire journey. So we have lots of webinars about it, child to parent violence and aggression. We have resources for families surrounding child to parent violence and aggression. And anyone that joins our community would have access to those services and supports and all that educational information as well.
Thank you to Helen and Nicole for joining us today, sharing your personal and professional experience and bringing some awareness to the challenges that caregivers may face while supporting this complex population. It's great to know that there are some wonderful resources and supports available, and we hope that all of you who are joining us will explore these when navigating your caregiving experience.